Hey Nipo, hi Mbali. Hope you guys are doing well. Happy Freedom Day. I hope you've had a good day. So we're going to kick off with what was supposed to be in today's lectures. So with the load shedding, it's been a bit problematic. So I've decided to try and do it now and get it done. So what I'm going to do is, just because of the load shedding, I'm going to put my camera off. I'm going to share my screen and then we're going to continue. I'll most probably do this in 2 or 3 parts and I'll send you the links so you'll get them by tomorrow, which is Friday. Okay, so let's continue from where we left off yesterday. I just want to get to my screen. Okay, so I'm sharing my screen now. I hope you guys can see it. So basically, before I continue with corporate branding, let's just have a look at some of the things that we discussed this week. So we went into detail about corporate identity, corporate expression, brand personality. So remember we discussed the 3 sort of or 4 elements, no, actually the 3 strategic aspects of a corporate brand, and I think we've covered that in detail. So what we're going to do is, so corporate identity we've also covered, and then we went through each one of these items on here, which is relating to corporate expression as part of a corporate identity. We spoke about visual identity, brand promise, brand personality, and brand communication. So remember, a brand promise is essentially what companies offer to its customers. So in terms of what they promise they're going to deliver on, that is what they will do. Brand personality, remember, it's similar to an individual. If you look at an individual, so in terms of the personality, that would speak to a company's values, such as honesty, integrity, trust, etc. Then we've got brand communication, and we covered the 3 elements of marketing communication, management communication, and organizational communication. So each one is there's a specific style of writing when communication is done. So even the organizational communication that we spoke about, that is when we communicating to our employees on behalf of a director or probably the CEO of the company, and how information will be structured. We spoke about brand experience, and the basis of brand experience is trust. So remember, I mentioned to you that it's only once a consumer experiences a brand that they are able to make that connection with the brand. And that is how brand loyalty is then built. And in order for brand loyalty to be built, the customer has to have a good experience. So customers are familiar with different aspects of a brand, and we spoke about things like logo design. We spoke about the Pantone colors. All of these are linked to brand experience. We also covered the 4 elements of brand experience. If you can recall, and if you think about it, it's the sensory. We spoke about sensory. Then sensory, for example, it's using your senses. The example that we used in class was the smell of the coffee or food or whatever it may be. The next is affective, and we spoke to that in terms of how a customer relates to that. We had behavioral, intellectual, etc. So intellectual as well speaks to when customers are interested and they would like to find out more about the brand. That is what it speaks to in terms of brand experience. So we've covered this in detail. I'm not going to go through it again. And we spoke about the essence of brand experience. Okay, and then brand relationships we spoke on. And we spoke about brand communities. The example that we used in class was more specifically around like people who are Apple fanatics and they have a specific club, or the Harley Davidson. It's people that have a specific sort of value around being part of that exclusive group. And then we went on, yeah, I think that is where we stopped. No, we actually covered this. We've covered corporate branding. And no, we didn't cover corporate branding. Apologies, guys. Trying to figure out which slide are we on. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to continue with this chapter. And just to give you, to make a note that when I went through today in terms of weeks 10 material, I see that the positioning is covered there. So we'll be covering that next week in class in terms of the positioning and the different elements of that you've got to actually, the brand identity. There's a whole lot of terminology around that. I'm just looking at it quickly. Just want to give you. So next week, what we will do is we're going to cover the brand sustainability, brand positioning, and then the brand elements that needs to be considered for brand positioning. There's quite a few of them. And then the brand positioning map. So what I would urge you to do is I've sent through the roadmap for next week and the material. It should be probably uploaded by tomorrow, which is Friday. Okay, let's continue. So just to give you a heads up that it's not going to be covered in this recordings, it's going to be done next week. So corporate branding is a name, term, sign, symbol, design, or a combination of them that is able to identify the goods or services of a seller or group of sellers and differentiates them from others. So when you look at an MTN, you can easily differentiate it between an F&B or a Nedbank, right? So you are easily able to identify them because of the colors, their logos, etc. Corporate brand contributes to the stakeholders' images of the organization. So there's a lot of companies that invest in, as we've mentioned before, branding of the building. They will do corporate adverts. They will do commercial adverts. They will do different kinds of communication in order to reach the target audience. Remember, not one communication is it's not a one size fits all. So each of the stakeholders or the target audience of the company will be different in the way that we communicate to them. What we can do is cluster them, right? So for example, those customers that actually maybe read a specific, maybe they read News 24 online and the information will be there. We clustered them into how we target them, right? The marks denoting ownership, image, building, services, symbols is a conduit by which pleasurable experiences may be consumed. So if you go and look at perhaps a Starbucks or Krispy Kreme or whichever store, right? Even the building, the actual building. So if you go into Mug and Bean, it's designed in a specific way. And with Mug and Bean, their approach is as follows. So where the customers actually sit is they have ports, charging ports, So those who are needing to plug in their devices, whether it's laptop or an iPad, whatever it may be, in order to continue working. So they have designed their premises or the restaurants so that people can actually do this. And you will find in certain malls, if I can call it. So if you look at like a Mug and Bean, like the one in Clearwater Mall, it is like basically 2 stories. At the bottom, it's quite noisy, rowdy. If you go upstairs, it's slightly quieter, right? So you can actually sit and work. It's not going to be as noisy. So it's all about design. Starbucks as well, if you walk in there, the seating arrangements, how they have it, it's designed for the consumer in mind and what they want to convey out there. So visual, verbal, and behavioral expression of an organization's unique business model. So this is designed, the visual appeal, the verbal appeal, and behavioral expression of an organization is unique to each and every company. So even the way, remember we said the behavioral aspect to it is linked to employees. And with employees, every company has a different approach to how they deal with customers. So for example, the call center in every single company is different, the way those employees are trained, etc., because they are going to interface with customers. Corporate branding takes place when the organization markets itself as a brand. And we look at Coca-Cola, we discussed this yesterday, and Coca-Cola, yes, is definitely, it's a brand, not a company. It's AB InBev. So this is what companies do, is they would not do advertising specifically on AB InBev. They would do advertisements around Coca-Cola. The same, it's a slightly different for Pepsi. Pepsi is the company and the brand. So they didn't, with Pepsi, they didn't want to separate the two. They wanted customers to have that sort of connection. Now, this is ultimately, corporate branding is ultimately linked to organizational reputation, which becomes stronger when the brand promise is kept. Now, when you look at cars, right, and the commercials, especially the TV commercial, because with vehicles, you probably would need to have a visual appeal or visual of it. So how this is done is through billboards. You get the roving billboards, or the best way they do this is TV commercials, where they show you how safe Volvo is, and it's actually a safe car, and it's good enough for actually traveling with your family as well. When you look at watches and their connection to Swiss Precision, now, not sure if you know about this, but in Switzerland, it's all about precision. So everything from the way the public transport works, like buses and the trains, they work like their Swiss Precision is absolutely amazing. So if it's on the schedule that the bus will arrive at 1 o'clock, just before 1 o'clock, you will watch the bus arriving or reaching closer to where you are, and the same goes for the train. So it's a brand promise, which then, once it is kept by a company, what really happens is this gives the company a good reputation in the eyes of the customer or consumer. So we continue with corporate branding, and the corporate brand defines what the organization will deliver and stand behind. So the branding, right, it defines what the organization will deliver and stand behind, similar to the brand promise. It can potentially have a rich heritage, assets and capabilities, people, values and priorities, a local or global frame of reference, a citizenship program, and a performance record. So when you look at a company, right, when they say a rich heritage, so they will normally say that this company began in this place and it began from humble beginnings, and or it could be a family run business that's run from generation to generation to generation, handed down. Okay, if you look at the Oppenheimer family, they come from a rich heritage, and it's handed down from generation to generation. Assets, so you look at buildings, you would look at how many offices they have, you would look at the manufacturing facilities, you would look at capabilities. Capabilities, people, those are resources. So what kind of resources does the company have? So for example, Checkers 6060 has, for example, the mobile application, right? They have a set of people who are working on this mobile application to actually develop it further. Because remember, when a company comes up with a product and service and it's really doing well in the market, innovation, it's most likely that innovation doesn't really stop there. It goes beyond than where it is currently. So for example, that what I use now, Checkers 6060, although they're doing exceptionally well, what happened is during COVID-19 pandemic, so Checkers 6060 was launched in November 2019. The pandemic entered into South Africa in March 2020, and by then the e-commerce or the mobile application was already up and running. And what then happened is other stores, because people had to adhere to the hard lockdowns, which means that movement out of their homes was restricted. So a lot of companies, Woolworths, Pick n Pay, all of these retailers were coming up with platforms and apps. I think Woolies came out with Woolies Dash for people to order online or through a mobile application and then have their groceries delivered to their door. So now Checkers 6060 has gone a step further, and recently this year they've come up with what they call, it's a promise that they make to people, right, in terms of delivery. So it's related to a service, so it's service promise that they've made. And what they're saying is that if your groceries are delivered, just say they guarantee like it will be delivered in an hour. If it's delivered later than an hour and a half, you're going to have that delivery charge credited to your account, right? And also, if your groceries arrive with less than 80% of the products that you've ordered, then the same thing will happen, is you get credited for the delivery fee. Now, this was recently launched. It was launched this year. And to my point is that companies need to consistently innovate, because now their competitors, Checkers competitors in the retail space, all have like e-commerce channels that they can actually access in terms of, so they need to uniquely position themselves, and this is what they do. So even in terms of a local and global footprint, right, a lot of companies have that. And if you look at a Starbucks, wherever you go in the world, even if you go to Paris, the Starbucks logo in that same green color is exactly the same in Paris that you will find in South Africa. So it doesn't matter where in the world, even in McDonald's, like we were chatting earlier this week, even you will see that big bright M in that red, you will see it. So and this is in every country. So corporate brands should be multidisciplinary and must be underpinned by the brand promise and aligned with corporate identity. So when we talk about multidisciplinary, that it should have different facets and different ways to meet the need of their target audience. And this is the foundation of this, is connected to the brand promise and aligned with the corporate identity. The brand promise is to deliver on what the company said that they would deliver on. And secondly, to be aligned with the corporate identity. So whether you in Gauteng or you in Cape Town, if you want to go to a Nedbank, you will still know and be able to identify a Nedbank by their logo and the way the actual bank is designed. So this would have been the exercise that would have been done in class, and it's basically looking at the difference between corporate brands and product brands. Now, if you think about it before I move on in terms of the actual answer, is if you think about corporate brands and product brands, right? These are two separate things. They're not the same. So I'm just moving to that chapter, and chapter 7. 175. Okay, so product brands. Let's start with product brands. These are expectations that can be managed through the use of implementation of traditional marketing functions, such as production, distribution, positioning, target marketing, segmentation, and creative strategies. It's focused on customers and making sure that it adds value to the lives of stakeholders. So an example we put there is Ariel and Omo washing powder. So when we look at this and what product brands is, it's to manage the expectations, right, of the customers by implementing different marketing functions. Now, marketing, as we said, so segmentation deals with the target market, like when you've done in your assignments where you look at the stakeholders and you do the demographic for each one, you look at like their income levels, age groups, etc. Right? Positioning could be in which stores this is going to be sold, right? As well as the distribution, production, etc. So when you look at, for example, Omo, product brand, let's look at Omo washing powder. So if you look at Brazil, right? So in Brazil, you have the Northeasterners and Southeasterners. Now, the Northeasterners, they have approximately, I don't know if it's more now, but at the time when I read up on that specific case study, Omo had about 81% market share they have it in two formats. They have it in a bar soap and they've got washing powder, but it's packaged. So Unilever has packaged different, for Omo, they have different variants of Omo, right? And then the bar soap, they have different variants. Some even have different names. And when we say the product brand and it's focused on the customer, right? There was customers that they didn't have a product that was delivering on what the need was in the Northeasterners. And they did come up with a product called Ala in Brazil, and that is specifically targeted at the customers. And then tied to that is the production, distribution, and how are they going to get it into the market, and how do they segment their target. So that was a very interesting case study. If you get a chance, please read up on it. Your corporate brand, on the other hand, is supported by the brand promise, right? And the aim is to ensure that stakeholders remain loyal to the brand. So Nedbank, Absa, they have multiple stakeholders. Each one is managed differently. So for your Absa or Nedbank, you will have clients who have businesses, right? You will have clients, and even Capitec. You will have clients that are only, they applied for home loans or vehicle finance, so they're grouped differently, right? And you will find that in many instances where, and as you progress through life, you will find this is the case. So you may buy a vehicle this year, right? And you keep it for 5 years and you finance the vehicle through one of the banks, right? So once the car is paid up after 5 years or 5.5 years, and you use the car for another year, and just say you've gone through Nedbank and you've financed your vehicle. After 5.5 years, you get a better job and you feel that you want a slightly bigger car. So you approach the bank and you say to them, well, you want another loan or a vehicle finance loan. And the thing is, if you've had a good experience with the bank, with Nedbank, in the first instance, you're going to remain loyal to the brand and continue using that brand for a long time. You're not going to change and just go to Nedbank unless you get a job sorry, not Nedbank, in ABSA. Unless you get a job in ABSA, and then you would probably move to ABSA because then you would get preferential rates. So that is the nice thing about working in banks, is that employees get preferential prime lending rates, not the normal one that your average person would actually just pay. So corporate identity versus corporate brands. Let's have a look at that. Corporate identity and corporate brands are often used, these two terms are often used interchangeably, meaning that people confuse them, right? But there are significant difference between the two. A very good example, and it's a recent one, you have in instances where people use social media and media interchangeably. They think it's one in the same, but it's not. Media is media and social media is social media. So it's similar to that, right? So corporate identity for an organization speaks to the following two questions. Who are we and what are we? Now, remember part of the discussion that we had in terms of that you did in class, that you could understand how vast it is. So when we say who are we and what are we, remember under corporate identity, we have the mission, vision, values, culture, strategy, all of those things that relate to the corporate identity. Remember those blocks that you looked at on page 100, I think it was 173. You can have a look and just see as a refresher, but basically that's what it does. Corporate brands are not applicable to all organizations, right? So corporate identity, yes. Corporate brands are expression and images of an organization's identity. A corporate brand becomes an expression and image of corporate identity. So a corporate brand is essentially part of the corporate identity, right? It deals with expression, it deals with image. So an image or a logo, right, is the corporate brand, which falls under corporate identity. This brand builds expectations within each stakeholder group and builds the expectation of what the organization will deliver to each stakeholder group. So what this does is the brand, right, when they engage with each of these stakeholder groups, they build expectation of what the organization is going to deliver to each of those groups. Okay, so I think this one, I am just going to stop sharing for a minute. Want to look for this quickly. Share my screen. This is a video, how to develop your corporate reputation.
name's Gary Davis. I'm a professor of strategy at Manchester Business School, but my key focus, research-wise and teaching-wise, is the management of reputation. Traditionally, reputation was seen as something that you had to defend. It quotes like, on every word, a reputation dies. Every CEO would have heard things like that, and that crisis management is maybe part of their role, but when there are problems with an organization, a large organization, we want to hear from the person at the top of that organization. So I think most CEOs traditionally would have seen reputation under the issue of defense and risk. What we've done at MBS over the last 10 years is to show how it can be used positively to promote the bottom line. The old question really before our work was, if we are profitable as an organization, is that what's causing our good reputation, or is it that reputation is driving profitability? I don't think there's a very clear link between reputation and profitability. I think the easier idea to respond to, the easier link to see, is from reputation to sales growth and from sales growth to profitability. One of the ways of creating reputation is through your CEO. The CEO literally personifies the organization, not only to members of the public if they're media friendly, but certainly to members of the organization. Our research demonstrates in a service culture, the reputation of the organization as seen by employees is key. Now, that sounds a bit strange. You'd expect it to be the reputation as seen by customers, but customers get a lot of their emotional attachment or the lack of it from their interaction with employees. And if you meet an employee that's clearly enthusiastic about the organization that they work for, goes that extra yard, then that will spill over onto the customer. It will have a positive influence on the customer, who will spend more, who will recommend your organization to their friends and family. No problem. But where does the employee get their positive views of the organization? Quite often from a charismatic CEO. The CEO whose abilities include leadership, inspiring enthusiasm, promoting this lovely word that everyone talks about these days of engagement amongst their employees. In my lifetime, the media has changed dramatically. I think the biggest change came from the advent of the internet and the immediacy that the media became in terms of its impact on both the customer and the employee. There's a joke. If I want to find out what's happening in my company, do I look on the notice board? No, I log on to whatever's being said about my organization at the moment by the media. And words, facts, fiction about an organization can spread around the globe in seconds these days. Traditionally, then, a company could put a brave front on it. They could say, they could deny, they could blame other people. These days, that is incredibly difficult to do. Nowadays, the vast majority of managers that we train will be in the services sector. They will find their career in the services sector. In the services sector, that sort of cultural angle is so important, and the tone that the CEO sets. And it's the media that often acts as the filter, either positively or negatively, for that individual to express his or her values to the organization and to the public, obviously to the customers of the organization in particular.
Okay, just want to close this. My mouse is acting up. Share my screen again. So there's a couple of things we can take away from this video in terms of how to define your corporate, your reputation. And guys, I don't know what's going on with my screen here. So if you didn't see the visual of it, it is in your roadmap. You can find the link there and you can access the video. So there's a couple of things that I just want to highlight in this video that's really critical for you to understand and to take away from it. Is that the first thing is that when the gentleman talks about having a charismatic CEO and having people be enthusiastic to be at work, and if they're enthusiastic, they will more likely go the extra mile for the organization because they are motivated and inspired. So there are various types of different leaders in the corporate world. Is that you will get a charismatic leader, you'll get transformational leader. There's so many different types of leaders. Now, how often do you find, and you've not been in the corporate world, but you will, it's reality kicks in when you actually in a work environment, you can actually gauge whether employees are happy, even though you don't go and conduct research. It's by behavior. You look at the way people are, whether everyone's friendly, they greet, they're smiling, they look happy, they look like they want to be at work. It's not the case in other companies. Secondly, also very important, remember, not all CEOs have the skill to be able to be a spokesperson of a company. In many cases, the public relations professional will be tasked to be the spokesperson. Obviously, anything that goes into the public domain that impacts the reputation of an organization will have to be be run past the CEO's desk. So you can't just, if a journalist calls, just go off and give your comment without properly checking that it is the correct thing that you're giving. So remember, we don't necessarily know everything. Even in the working world, you also are consistently learning from other people, from your teammates, etc. The other important thing is the point that he mentioned is, does profitability drive reputation, or reputation drives profitability? That is quite an interesting thing, because when we say, does profitability drive reputation? So meaning that if the product is selling and the sales are up and it's doing really well, does that build a good reputation of the organization? Or is it because a really good reputation, right? That they are profitable. It's, rule. The other that's also in terms of the video, he spoke about the media and they excellent. I mean, if you want to read the news, back in the days, people read the news. How did they consume the news? Newspapers were delivered to the door, right? I still remember those days when it was delivered to our door. And then we would read the newspaper. Now you quickly go onto online and you can actually go to News 24 or whichever news channel, and you can just access information. You can even set alerts that you get breaking news as soon as it appears. So it's very important. In some companies, it's very tricky, especially when a CEO who's not good at speaking in public still insists that they want to be. Obviously, there's nothing you can do about it, but what you can do is in a very diplomatic way, is if you don't single the CEO out specifically, you have media training for all your executives. So you're not really pinpointing that there's an issue with your CEO in terms of him not being able to communicate well, right, in the public domain. So you would have a media training session for all representatives. For example, the executive committee, that is what you would probably do. But it's a very sensitive thing. So how you go about it, your approach will ultimately determine the outcome. So Let's deal with the third pillar. So we've gone through corporate identity. We've spoken at length about corporate brand. Let's move through to corporate reputation, right? This is so much more than corporate image and corporate identity. I think the quote is further down in here in terms of it takes 20 years to build a company and it can be ruined in an instant. And you'll see these examples I've put. So if we look at the definition, a stakeholder's overall evaluation of a company over time. So corporate reputation is how a stakeholder evaluates what the company does, the kind of information, experience with the company over a period of time. The evaluation is the company, any form of communication and symbolism about the organization's actions and or a comparison with the actions of leading rivals. Now, we use an example in class yesterday about discovery. Right? Discovery, although yes, the medical, one of the offerings is medical aid or medical health care, right? Right, but they are looking at expanding on that to that they're able to, and the other to into the income. So this is why it's important to look at trends, right? So living standards measure is normally when you're doing stakeholder mapping. So when you look at stakeholder, whatever it is, you would then go and look at the demographics of these stakeholders, right? That talks about age. So under income, living standards measure, or LSM, you get from 1 to 10, 10 being very affluent, 1 being for people who are on a lower income level, right? So that is now evolved to socio economic measure. And I think I have mentioned it. So keep an eye out when you're doing research with SEM as a measurement, because when you're looking at customers, someone who's living in an informal or underprivileged community may be able to still afford something that's a brand name. So it's blurring the lines in terms of LSM. So LSM is no longer a realistic way of looking at the income part of demographics, right? So this is experiences the company, the stakeholder or the customer has with the company. So it could be, for example, when you look at the form of communication. So if you've gone and you've bought a slab of Cadbury's chocolate, or maybe a tub of Nestle, a 2-liter tub of Nestle ice cream, the ice cream is completely melted. And you know, when ice cream melts and it refreezes, it has these icicles over the top, and the volume of the tub is reduced. You contact Nestle or Cadbury. For chocolate, it's Cadbury, and for the ice cream, it would be Nestle. And you would say, listen, you would say, I bought this product, and this is, I've sent through a photo. This is what it looked like, and even the chocolate, when you open the actual wrapping, it had white all over it, which means that the chocolate was exposed to heat, and therefore it has the sort of whitish or ashish look on it. And you phone the customer service and say, look, I've purchased this product, I'm not happy, etc., etc. Based on how the person who actually
came into contact with the customer, how that is dealt with will ultimately determine the reputation in the stakeholder's mind about the company. So in the one company, say Nestle, right? The agent is very good and apologizes profusely. What they will ask the customers, please give me your barcode, please let me know which store you bought it, when you bought it, etc., etc. The reason they ask the customer that kind of information is because they want to go and have a look at other products that are in the freezer or on the shelf that may be a problem, and they may need to recall some of that product. So if the process was seamless and the call center agent said, listen, I will now send you, give me your address or email, I'm going to mail you a voucher, and they give you a voucher probably 3 times of what you actually paid for the product, and the customer's happy, and that is all sorted. So it is different things. Even if you want to take something and return it, you still have the slip, you have the tag, and the way the person the other day, and Nipo, I think it was you mentioned about Debonair's as well. So you don't go and trash the people or the manager in the company, you trash the company. And that is how damage is caused to the reputation. Even on Hello Peter, Hello is a platform years ago. People still today go onto Hello Peter to write reviews, good or bad, and also to make other customers aware that experience they've had. Are free to post whatever they want on whichever platform. With social media like Hello Peter, and through the media monitoring service that the company will have in place, a media monitoring service, if you get a chance, please read up on it. It's called Melt Different Brands, right? So you would give them all of those names. If it is flagged in the media, that is immediately that article or that source is pulled up, and you get it like a daily report in terms of what was posted in the media relating to the company, good or bad. So that gives a company a sense of what is being published out there and how can they rectify it if it's a situation where it's not good. A relatively stable, issue-specific perceptual representation of a company's past actions and future prospects compared against some standard. So customers are probably going to look at, all prospective customers. Just say a company wants to go, or a customer wants to purchase a specific product, right? They go and look at, like, for example, Hello Peter, what are the reviews people have said on this? And if it's bad, you know what, they might not go to that and purchase that product. So customers have become more smart in this day and age, because what they do is they actually go and do research. So when you're going to buy a car, you are not just going to go into the first dealership that you see. You're going to do your research. And remember, it's critical to note, right, that when you are with your group of friends or family, whoever it may be, if they've had a negative experience with a brand or a company for that matter, you are going to hear about it, and you're going to hear all about this experience, and you will be hesitant. The reason why you hesitate or you go and do additional research is because these are trusted sources or trusted advisors that give you information, and they will pass on this information for the greater good, meaning that Please beware, don't get caught out on this, etc. Numerous positive effects stem from having a good corporate reputation. It is the strongest determinant of an organization's sustainability. Now, one of the main factors, right, of a company remaining sustainable, which means that they continue to exist and continue to sell products or services, is based on having a good reputation. We looked at examples the other day in terms of clicks, right, with the Tresemme example. We looked at companies like Unilever with the Dove advert. They have had a good corporate reputation. Therefore, even though they underwent a crisis and they had made a huge blunder in the media, in the public domain, they have recovered from it. Other companies like Steinhoff, no, not so much. Now, when we speak of reputation, there's two videos that I have sourced that I want you to watch. Remember, corporate reputation, or reputation, not corporate reputation. So corporate reputation deals with a company or an organization, and then you have an individual's reputation. If you look at various individuals, right, and what happened to their reputation. Tiger Woods, what happened to him, right? Some people in South Africa that have been found doing the wrong. Okay, guys, sorry about that. That's load shedding for you. So yes, please bear with me. So there are individuals that will be impacted, and then corporate, strictly to corporate. Now we're going to look at these quotes here. And this is the one that I mentioned to you about Warren Buffett, the one on the left. It's a very, very famous quote. It's used in a lot of workshops relating to reputation. So what it says, it takes 20 years to build a reputation, and 5 minutes. It's taken 20 years to build a CEO trust in its people, so that they are motivated, they are inspired, so they will go the extra miles. So there are instances where you think, when you call a company and you need assistance for something, that person on the other end goes out of their way. And even if they don't know, they say, can I call you back? Please give me your number. It's motivated and inspired, and you have a good experience with the company. If you lose money for the firm, I will be forgiving. If you lose the reputation, I will be ruthless. That's also by Warren Buffett. Now, losing money for the firm is one thing, but your reputation of the organization is critical. It is so difficult to build that unless you are, but you see, even companies like Tiger Brands, right, the Studiosis, they took a knock. Toyota, many years back, there's actually a book that's written about the disaster with the motor vehicle recalls. Toyota was one of the top 3 brands at the time, or even in the top 4, I would say. They took a huge knock when there was a motor vehicle recall, and it took those mishaps. reputation is to endeavor to be what you desire to appear. That's Socrates. And Henry Ford said the two most important things in any company do not appear in its balance sheet. The two most important things in any company do not appear in its balance sheet, its reputation and its people. That could not be more apt or more relevant, if I can say that. So it's not necessarily about the balance sheet and the profitability, which speaks to the other quote. It's the reputation and its people. Remember when we spoke about corporate identity and corporate brand, remember we mentioned about the behavioral aspect, right? Relating to a company, and that speaks to the employees, how the employees carry themselves out. Sales representatives, people that have, guys, I'm really sorry about this. I'm really sorry. I didn't want to get this lecture late, so I'm doing it while we have load shedding. So apologies, my humblest apologies. So as I was saying, the is, and there's another two quotes. You can't buy a reputation. You must now remember not employees, customers. Guys, I'm going to try and log out just now and log back in because this is a bit ridiculous. I don't know what's going on. So take care of your reputation. It's your most valuable asset. Now, a good reputation is greater than economic returns. We say ability drive a good reputation, or good reputation drives profitability. Reputation outweighs, right, economic returns. Economic returns is good. Impact. So what happens if a company has a good reputation or a really great reputation? What happens is that that company will probably continue to exist and remain financially sustainable and profitable, meaning that customers will be brand loyal and they will continue to purchase the products or services. If you look at Coca-Cola, they're just a fantastic brand. People love them. And even Discovery, you know, there's so many people who they have this vitality program, and people are like, they really die hard fans of it, if I can call it, and they use all of this. So it does that. It keeps customers connected to the brand, and the customers still support the brand. Organizational success in relationships with clients and stakeholders. So in terms of financial sustainability, think of some of the products that you've been buying for years and years, whether it's peanut butter, right? Whether it's, and you know, the thing about peanut butter, I've seen many people, you have the one crunchy and you have the smooth. There's some people that will only eat the one type. And I mean, peanut butter or All Gold jam or the tomato sauce, you know, that is a brand that, those are brands that have been on the shelves for years and years and years, and they're still remaining, right? So organizational success in relationships with clients and stakeholders is also dependent on employees. So So with organizations, right, they need to be employee-centric, customer-centric. So it's split into two. As much as they're focusing on customers and doing their best to the greatest product or service, the other thing they need to do is the very same thing with employees. Because if they invest in employees so that they are motivated and inspired, now even if your CEO is charismatic, the one thing to So the CEO has to drive this ethos throughout the organization, that leaders within the organization that have teams, right? They also need to then be able to motivate, like the CEO would do this for his line managers, so it's about shareholders and investors. So when a company has good reputation, investors, people who have invested millions or billions in a company, they will be happy, because if the company has a good reputation, they're associated with the company who has a good reputation. Shareholders, the people who have bought shares in the company, they will also be happy that the company has a good reputation, because it means that they will ultimately be profitable and it will then benefit them when dividends are paid out. Now, there's two examples or two videos that I managed to find, and let's hope this does not give me problems, that I'd like to share with you. So remember when I said there's two things. There's the one where individuals' reputation can be harmed, and the other is in terms of, I can't get this thing to. Give me 2 seconds, guys. I just want to get to this. Just want to copy the link. So I don't know if you remember this incident. It was when Johnson & Johnson, they knew of asbestos in baby powder, and they didn't actually do anything about it, which was quite disappointing. So I'm just going to share this with you. I'm going to play it and then I'm going to pause it and then share the screen. It was quite something.
Revitalift hyaluronic acid serum. $500 points. Johnson & Johnson also weighed down that index, falling more than 10% after it was reported that the company may have known for decades that its baby powder sometimes contained asbestos, which can cause cancer. For more now, Jim Axelrod.
Essentially, my cancer is terminal.
Her name is Tony Roberts.
I wanted to spend time with my sons. I wanted to spend time with my grandchildren.
She died of ovarian cancer in October. She was 61. Roberts had used Johnson & Johnson's talcum powder product since she was a teenager and suspected asbestos in the powder had caused her cancer. While talc and asbestos often naturally occur together in the earth, J&J has long since denied the claim the talc could be contaminated with known carcinogens, but almost 10,000 lawsuits have been filed claiming
the question is there asbestos in Johnson & Johnson's products? We believe and have always believed that there isn't.
But now Reuters has examined documents that reveal the company knew about the presence of small amounts of asbestos in its products as far back as 1957, but did not disclose that to the public. Ted Meadows represents 13 plaintiffs who claim J&J talc products caused ovarian cancer.
And not only have they known about it, they've attempted to hide it from the public. And that's exactly what they've been able to do for decades, is hide this from the public.
A jury awarded Tony Roberts and 21 other plaintiffs nearly $4.7 billion. But Roberts wasn't focused on money at the end of her life. She was focused on her grandchildren.
And I have a new one coming in December, and I'm probably not going to have the chance to even get to meet that one.
In a statement today, Johnson & Johnson maintained the Reuters article was both false and said its baby powder was safe and free from asbestos. J&J claims testing on more than 100,000 shows, quote, talc does not cause cancer or asbestos-related disease. Margaret?
Thank you, Jim. Well, stocks took another day.
Okay, that's quite interesting, guys. When you look at that scenario, is that the company still maintained that they did not know that there was asbestos in the talc powder, in the baby powder. And I mean, a lot of younger people, right? As young as 7, 8, 9, teenagers, young adults, they all make use of this talcum powder. And it is so sad when you have a situation where a company, and Reuters is not a small company, it's a big company. So they've identified that, and it's just sad. And then that is a corporate reputation that took a tank. You saw the share price fall. That is the first thing that actually happens, is a share price of the company falls when an incident like that comes to light. So on the other hand, this was the famous, this was Bill Clinton, and
the president speaks forcefully with his most emphatic denial yet of sex and lies in the Monica Lewinsky case. I did not have relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky. I never told anybody to lie, not a single time, never. At the same time, Special Prosecutor Ken Starr increases the pressure on Lewinsky to testify against the president as the White House remains under fire.
This is the CBS Evening News with Dan Mather reporting tonight from Washington.
Good evening. Here at the White House, the president's new counterattack went beyond the court of public opinion to actual court in Little Rock. This includes a blistering attack, all but directly accusing Special Prosecutor Republican Ken Starr of being out to the president in new motion to the Paula Jones case. Former
and attorneys tell us that she has told prosecutors all she knows. They describe what they call a complete account of her relationship with President Clinton. That was over the telephone today. It was not written down. Prosecutors are thrilled to decide whether they will offer days. His lawyers wanted it that way. But the political damage was rising much too fast. Today, drawn and bleary-eyed, Clinton joined the battle to save his president.
But I want to say one thing to the American people.
Okay, guys, so those two videos that you saw in terms of the one being a company where Johnson & Johnson was in hot water for the talcum powder, and the other one was Bill Clinton. So you look at the corporate reputation and then the individual reputation, and you look at what happens in those instances, right? Even for an individual like the president, Bill Clinton, right? He had his wife, Hillary Clinton, there supporting him, and they make it known that Hillary Clinton is supporting Bill Clinton in terms of him not being guilty. So it is also, so you have corporate and then you have a brand. Now, the reason why I am making the distinction between the two is because sometimes, for example, your CEO that you're working for this company is embroiled in a scandal. That ultimately is a crisis, affects the reputation of the company and the CEO in an individual capacity. But also very importantly is the fact that it causes reputational damage. Now, keeping stakeholders' perspective in mind. It is important when putting out any marketing or communication strategies together that to keep the stakeholders' perspective in mind. And that speaks to, for example, the Dove, when they did that advert where the lady, she changed race when she used a product, right? That is the marketing strategies, it didn't go down well. It also must understand what drives stakeholders' perspectives. So if you look in South Africa is a very sensitive nation. And with regards to certain things that is positioned out there, whether it relates to race, religion, or whatever the case may be, we've got to be cognizant of what is happening in the country and in terms of the issues that are, or challenges that we have. So from a social perspective, what are customers or the public in general in South Africa, what are we sensitive about? It's things like race, discrimination, all of those things. And race is a big thing. I mean, look at Dove, and even with the Tresemme, you know, those are typical examples. So it's also keeping in mind that is why I always mention, guys, please read as widely as possible, because that is some of the things that you're going to have. It's not something you can get out of textbook. It's only gained through reading and researching. Environmental practices. A lot of customers, before they even purchase products, they look at how responsible the company is when it comes to the environment. Also with regards to testing of products. So if you look at your beauty lines like L'Oreal, Revlon, etc., for specifically around makeup, you will see a lot of the products, even Clarins, if I can remember, Environ, you will see a number of these products. It is based on non-animal cruelty. So that means there's no animal testing. Now, I'm not sure if you're 100% aware of this, but with a lot of these beauty brands, some of them, they actually test on animals, which for me personally doesn't sit well with me. So they will look at from like a wide lens in terms of what companies are doing, whether they care about the environment, whether they care about the planet. Now, a lot of companies these days have the triple bottom line, which is called people, planet, and profit. So when they are operating their businesses, they keep those things in mind. The triple bottom line is profitability about the company, caring about people, being invested in people, and also being very, very invested in terms of the planet. So a lot of stakeholders look at how a company operates and what they're doing and how they take care of preserving the environment even. Sound leadership and good management practices are very key to ensure that in terms of the stakeholders' perspective of the reputation of the organization. And the example that I made earlier on is when a CEO has 5,000 or 10,000 people in a company, how is he able to motivate and inspire all of these people? What needs to be done is he would motivate and inspire the people or leaders in the organization, and that sort of ethos is then filtered down to different teams. So that is how you get everyone onto the same page. Personal reputation of top management, like I said, for your CEO, if you're in a company and there's a scandal relating specifically to your CEO, it will impact the organization. And then it will impact your CEO as an individual brand. It will have a negative effect. But it's not only your CEO, it's any of your board members, any directors, and any senior management in the company. Investments in good governance. Now, there's a report that's has been released many years ago. It's called the King Report, and that speaks specifically to governance. So any company that is listed on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, what they say in that guidelines, if you want to be listed on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, you need to follow the guidelines. One of the terms is you've got to follow the guidelines that are in the King Report, failing which you will pay a penalty. Now, the King Report speaks to ethics, it speaks to environment, it speaks to how a company is supposed to operate in an ethical manner on all fronts. For example, ethically in terms of the environment, ethically in terms of their business practices, etc. Not be involved in money laundering and corruption and that kind of thing. So if you have a company, I mean, when we talk about government, we've spoken about this so many times. And one of the things is, like, we have one of the highest corruption levels in the world. South Africa has one of the highest. And when we look at government and all the corruption that's happening, that's being brought to light in the news, it does not give us a good perception of government. Now that speaks to then the president. You know, it's a whole lot of things. We then tend to look at it realistically and say, if there's so much of corruption, is this if you're looking at a company like Steinhoff, right? So in the case of Johnson & Johnson as well, is to be ethical and to be transparent and to be honest and to have integrity. So with Johnson & Johnson, as soon as that would have broken in the news, I would have immediately, if I was using the baby powder, I would have immediately stopped using it. Because if you look at that video that I showed you, is the lady who had cancer and she died. Although she was awarded, she was one of the 21 applicants that won, I don't know how many billion rands. The court awarded that Johnson pay each of the 21 people that amount of money. The money didn't matter to her because she wanted to spend time with her family, and she unfortunately died in October, and I think the grandchild was born in December. So it speaks to a whole lot of things being ethical. Competence development in terms of, if you look at the processes and systems, like if you look at a supplier. So remember, the stakeholder could also be someone like your suppliers, right? Your shareholders. So in terms of the processes to ensure that suppliers get paid within 60 days or 30 days, especially small businesses or SMMEs, small to medium enterprises, they get paid within 30 days or immediate payment. It's to ensure that people are also trained to be able to deliver in terms of what stakeholders are expecting. Induction training and relevant compensation packages. So many times, part of the thing is, so when you join a company, there's generally an induction program or induction training. And this, what it does is they normally have, each company is different the way they do it. Some companies just give you a manual. Some companies, for the first week in the company, on different days, you will attend like in the auditorium, and there will be different speakers telling you about the company. Someone from HR will come and speak, the CEO will speak, or whatever the case may be. And that is the start of an employee's journey with the company. Then secondly is also remaining competitive, especially when it comes to talent in the organization, to ensure that they're remunerated well enough. So if employees, especially new employees, they feel inclusive through the induction training and they're compensated well and they're happy, they will be inspired and motivated, and this will be carried through in terms of their engagement with stakeholders. So very important. Engaging in a socially responsible manner or behavior, that I've spoken to, like animal testing, etc. Also looking at the communities. And so if you look at a lot of companies, they are based in communities, right? If you look at Olifantsfontein, there are specific disadvantaged communities that huge companies are based in that area. It's also to say that we are operating in an environment where there is a community, and we also need to be socially responsible by investing in that community because we are in their territory and not vice versa. Displaying high ethical values, we spoke about that in terms of Steinhoff and the CEO not being caught in a scandal. And if you look at like Bill Clinton, it's a reflection then on the organization in terms of the unethical behavior. There's, if you look at the Zondo Commission and even Babita Deokaran, who was gunned down because she had uncovered something that was relating to the tenders in Tembisa that was not so, there was something not right. So it's having high ethical values. And in our country, we are seeing more of these unethical behavior coming to light in the media. Even if you look at now, Andre de Ruyter with Eskom. Andre de Ruyter said, this deals with unethical behavior in the ministry. And it's come to light that he spent money, he paid money for an investigation that was not, it was not recorded. It was off the books in the sense that it was something that he did a private investigation, and the person that conducted the investigation was responsible or very involved during the apartheid regime and involved in some hideous crimes, and it was worth a lot of money. So he was in Parliament this week, Andre de Ruyter, and there were some questions where he just simply did not answer. So it tells you that, yes, we all thought shame. You know, I also thought, you know, this poor man, Andre de Ruyter, you know, they even tried to put cyanide in his coffee and kill him, and he was going to flee the country and all of this. But now there's all of these things, unethical behavior that he's linked to that's coming to light. They've even made a sort of a mini documentary capturing it. The same with, I saw on the news today, Babita Deokaran. They've put together the cases. There's a documentary or a series on the cases that she was working on when she was gunned down at the time. So that is very interesting. So guys, this is where I think I am going to stop. And then I will carry on. I'm going to download this and then I'm going to carry on, because I must apologize once again for the connectivity. I've tried to do this during the unstable stages of load shedding and it still didn't work. So connecting, so what happens is when we have load shedding, I'm not sure if you experience this, the network does go down. So even if it's connected to my phone, the network drops and it comes back on. So I'm going to sign off here. This will be part A, and then we'll have a part B. I'm going to stop sharing and I will speak to you in the next recording. Thanks, guys.